All right, another quick husbandry video. This is for the Grammostola porteri, the G porteri, or the one commonly, well, one of the species commonly referred to as the rose hair tarantula. Now, this one is a bit extra special to me. This was actually the first tarantula I ever acquired. I picked her up mainly because my wife and I, who were just engaged at the time, had just moved out of my house. My mom would not allow tarantulas in the house, and one of the first things I did was find a tarantula. And I bought this off of a Marine who had quite an exotic pet collection, including tarantulas, scorpions, poisonous, venomous snakes, excuse me. And I've had her for 19 years now. When I picked her up, she was about 4.5 inches long. So we guessed that she was probably, I know for a fact she was a wild caught specimen. So with the growth rate of this species, which is very, very slow, I'm guessing that she was probably already 5 to 10 years old when I got her. Now 19 years later, she's still kicking, still quite beautiful. Obviously one of the favorites in my collection due to the sentimental value. This used to be a species that was considered the top beginner species, mostly because they are darn near impossible to kill with husbandry mistakes. You have to figure I picked this girl up when I was in my, I think it was 21 when I got her. Wasn't a lot of information about tarantulas out then, so I kind of wung it. She was kept in a Tupperware container on vermiculite. There was no real heating supplied, so I'm sure it probably got down to 60s at time. I really didn't know what I was doing, so I feel terrible for her. That's why she's got these nice accommodations. She's kept in one of Jamie's acrylic enclosures. I absolutely love this one. For the record, there should be more substrate in here. This is a little bit low. I was actually about to take her out and put some more substrate, add some more substrate to this, but she went into pre-molt. And what's so amazing about that is it was her first time going into pre-molt and her first time refusing food in about 8 years, 7 to 8 years. We figured it out. So this is a species that is very slow growing, and once they get reach adulthood, the molts are few and far between. So after 8 years, and I have to admit, a lot of the older species of tarantulas, when tarantulas get very old, a lot of times they die in molt. That's where a lot of them go down. And I was a little worried to have her molt again. I was very concerned. And one morning I got up to go to work and she was like leaned over half on her side. She didn't even completely flip over on her back. And so all day I was kind of worried that I was going to come home to a spider stuck in a molt, or even worse, a dead spider. But she came through it perfectly. Here's her molt over here. You can see that is obviously a female, if you couldn't figure out by the fact that she's lived so long. And you can see her colorations. There it was a lot browner, a lot darker now. I love the purple carapace. But again, I still think this is a good beginner species. They are very, very hardy. Unfortunately, it works against them sometimes because people don't take very good care of them and they live right through it and bebop along. The biggest issue with them, I would have to say, is their tendency to fast. Temperature changes can often bring it out of them. A lot of the species available in the pet trade are wild caught. So they basically are triggered by certain environmental factors, like the humidity goes down, the barometric pressure, who knows what it is, but they seem to recognize when it would be time for them in the wild to stop eating, and they'll stop. And it drives keepers nuts. And I actually just had 3 emails this week from people asking about their G roseas or G porteris and why they aren't eating and is this okay. And I love it because sometimes you get people that say like, oh, they haven't eaten in a month. Well, there's been instances where they haven't eaten in over a year and been perfectly fine. This is a species that does not require a lot of food. I hear a lot of instances of people overfeeding them, and pet stores will often dump in a bunch of crickets, which is horrifying because the poor things will eat one of those crickets and then just have a bunch of food running around them all the time, driving them nuts. This girl has literally done great on a diet of 4 or 5 large crickets a month. That's about it. And back in the day, sometimes I couldn't get crickets, so she'd go 2 months and it was perfectly fine. They don't eat a lot. After she stretches out and everything gets used to this new molt, I will probably give her a couple more than I normally would give her just to get her fattened up a little bit. But again, 4 or 5 crickets max a month. Large crickets will be enough. Another slow growing species. So if you buy one of these as a sling, if you're able to find a sling, it's going to take a while till you have a big hairy spider on your hand. As far as setup, this right here is a combination of vermiculite and I believe cocoa fiber. This was back, when I set this cage up, this is when I was just getting into them and had picked up a couple more. I was still using cocoa fiber then. Today, I'd probably just use dry dirt, dry topsoil. They do drink. This is one of the species I've seen drink more often than any of my other species. So please give them a water bowl, but do not moisten the substrate. Do not spray them down. Take any care sheet that you see online. Actually, just take any care sheet and throw it away and don't read it anyway. But if you find one online that says they're supposed to have high humidity and overflow it, don't listen to it. They don't need it. They absolutely abhor moisture. I give her a hide. It's a running joke in my house that she has been in the hide, I think, in the last 4 years, maybe twice. So expect your quintessential pet rock with this species. Still, they're fairly attractive. I actually love the look at them. They get fairly big. She was a solid 6 inches before she molted. I'm very curious to see if she picked up anything. 6.5 inches would be a hefty size G. Porteri. So I'll have to get a good measurement next time she's on the glass. But again, a great spider. I love them. I feel bad because they're kind of, they're not as popular nowadays. And a lot of it's because they're wild caught. And honestly, they need to stop taking them out of the wild. I believe Chile has closed their borders, so that should stop. But I also think a lot of it is just people find them boring compared to some of the other species. And that's kind of sad because they're a good one. Quick thing, I do not handle. The one time I tried to handle this spider was years ago when I was still highly arachnophobic, and she was hungry. I got a feeding instinct. She turned around and basically came at me with her fangs, and I'll admit it, I passed out. I woke up on the floor with the spider perched on the corner of her thing. Kind of forgot where I was and what I was doing. Kind of an amusing story, but nowadays it wouldn't happen. But back then I was extremely arachnophobic. I had put myself up to handling her because I thought that was something you had to do when you kept spiders. No, it isn't, and I shouldn't have done it, and I'm lucky I didn't hurt the spider or myself. So this is a species that is unpredictable as far as temperament. You get a lot of people talking about their rosies or their porteris being very tractable and handleable. You also hear stories of psycho rosies. Mine has a very good feeding instinct. I would not stick my hand in there. I would not attempt to handle her. Again, I don't normally handle. This is a species that could be handled. I would advise against it. So the G. Porteri, hopefully this girl goes on for another 19 or 20 years. It would be great having her. She's outlived just about everything I've got. And when you're looking, if there's somebody looking for a good first species of tarantula to keep, this is one on my list of top beginner species.